Welcome, everyone. Matt, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Glad that you could be here. Let's dive right in. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, what you do, a little bit about your background? That'd be great. Great place to start.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jamie. I'm Matthew Kaisaris. I'm the CEO and founder of Boreal Systems. I've been a project manager for 9 years, about that, mostly a mix between the digital marketing space and then shifted into product and AI. I was working at Zapier for a few years as a project manager. And then I've kind of bounced around the Monday.com ecosystem and a few different partners and decided to start Boreal Systems last year, kind of do it myself. And so at Boreal, we are, I don't want to say just another Monday.com consultancy, but we're one of the only Canadian Monday.com partners. And yeah, we're here to help companies get the most out of the workflow, put systems in place that hopefully work better for them to just optimize a lot of their workflows and hopefully help them scale a bit quicker and a bit more efficiently.
Great. So can you just a little bit more for those who don't know Monday.com? I assume most do, but just in case, Monday.com, and also when you start talking about optimizing workflows, getting more out of it, just a little more specific there would be great.
Yeah. So for those who don't know Monday.com, it's a work management platform. So anywhere from a simple CRM system to a project management tool to like a service ticketing system. Really, you can build anything inside of Monday.com. They probably don't like when I compare it to a spreadsheet, but for all my customers, I say the easiest way to think of Monday at the beginning is it's a spreadsheet on steroids. It's laid out in rows and columns, just like a spreadsheet, but you can just do so much more with it. And it's got such a nice open backend and API that you can just integrate lots of apps, whether there's a native integration or you build something, which is something we do as well. It's a very easy tool to work with. And so we set it up for a lot of construction companies, a lot of like marketing firms, car dealerships, anything under the sun where somebody either needs just like a customer like relationship tool, or they need like a project management tool or a task tracker or kind of anything under the sun. We've set it up as a full ERP for customers with integrations with accounting softwares and stuff like that. Money's a pretty big company with a pretty big reach. They keep growing and growing and adding more AI tools and stuff like that, month over month. So it's a pretty robust tool, and they've got a great partner ecosystem. So I've been in that for a couple of years now and enjoying it.
Great. And so from your experience, that's been the way that you've been finding people, like finding potential customers.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll take a little bit of a step back kind of in my career, and I'll talk about I've worked with, well, now 3 different partners, Boreal being one of them. When I started actually working in the Monday ecosystem, I worked for a company out of Calgary called Eligio. They were like one of the first Monday.com partners in Canada. They're like Monday's poster child for the partner ecosystem. And I went there as kind of one of their first solutions consultant roles, really kind of designing the system and then handing it off to the developers. And that's where I really got involved in the Monday partnership. By the time I left Eligio, not that I should share trade secrets or anything, but their relationship with Monday was super strong. It's probably the strongest out of any of the Monday partners, and they've got thousands of partners across the world. They were getting a lot of business from Monday. They worked well together, did a lot of co-marketing. They got a lot of leads from Monday. People would reach out to Monday saying, I want to use your platform, but I don't know how to set it up. I need somebody. They'd say, great, call Eligio. And they're a great team, great company, growing with a construction focus on there. And then I went to work for Asians Grow, which is a Quebec-based Monday.com partner. Construction is still the same niche, still the same focus, but a very different approach to how they do the build, but also how they dealt with the Monday.com relationship. When I went over there, they were just kind of on their own island. They didn't really deal with Monday other than saying like, give us commission for the licenses that we sell and stuff like that. But there's really no interaction between Monday and Grow there. And so when they brought me in, it was to build that relationship up. So I've jumped through all the hoops of the partnership program before. So I did that with Grow, and we went from a silver partner to a platinum partner in a couple months just because the pieces were there. They just had nobody doing the actual relationship building. And so I'm actually still working with Grow on like a fractional basis to just keep that relationship going and slowly train somebody as I build up Boreal here. But the way that Grow approached it was everything was outbound sales. There was almost no relationship with Monday. That's changing now. But it was like 90 or 95% of their sales were all just their own efforts, their own marketing. And so that partnership was vastly different between 2 very similar companies doing the same thing, same niche. And so there's a wide breadth there. Now with Boreal. It's we're kind of starting from the bottom of like their little authorized partner program and working our way up. So it's nice to see it from where I've been with big platinum partners to just like a little dinky authorized partner until we kind of grow more and jump through those hoops for Monday yet again.
Well, so yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that because I'd like to hear about the challenges of initial growth, like getting started, right? I know you were in the space, but you're still starting your own thing. So let's talk a little bit about that and also how the challenges have changed or are changing over time as you get some success, move the needle a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I think the biggest challenge personally was I need to pay my mortgage. And is it the right choice to start a business at this point? I mean, when you leave a company, it's either you leave on good terms and you're leaving for something else, or kind of they can kick you to the curb, or maybe there's some in between there. But when I left Deligio, very, very beginning of 2024, I think. I don't remember. Yeah, 2024. One of those years, a couple of years ago. It was a sudden departure, and they just wanted to shift a different direction, which was totally fine with me. But I was like, man, how am I going to pay my mortgage? I got to pay bills. I bought a house a couple of years ago. I've got a new puppy I'd gotten like a month before that, and it was just a whole. I mean, it's never an easy thing, I think, to leave a job. So I was fighting with the idea of, do I go all in and start something myself? And I had a couple of partners that I've went to college with and worked with in the past that were in similar boats or were about to be in similar boats and kind of wanted to leave where they were at. And we said, let's do it. Let's look for other jobs and let's find something in the meantime to keep the lights on. But let's start building up Boreal. So from like March of last year, we started pretty much a year ago now. We were starting to build up Boreal and planning, and we took our time and we didn't have a big rush on it, I think, which was a blessing in a way. Almost within like 2-3 weeks, I was working at Grow. I made that transition very quickly from the two companies, but I still had Boreal going, and we were still kind of building that up. And so the immediate concern of, man, how am I going to keep the lights on? How am I going to, put food on the table? And was kind of put on the back burner because I had another job lined up, which was great. But it wasn't something that I wanted to give up, Boreal. And I had a very open conversation with Carl, the CEO of Grow, being like, this is what I want to do. And he was like, I would rather have somebody that works for me go and start their own company and have a good relationship with us than leave on bad terms and go start a competitor. He's like, we're going to be competitors because we're in the same ecosystem, but we can be friends. We can, help each other. And so that's a lot of what we're doing now is we're subcontracting work out for Grow. And that was kind of the biggest challenge up front, was making that decision of, can I go full time, head first into Boreal right away? And the answer was no. Partially just, as I said, kind of have to pay the bills, but I didn't really know what I was doing either. As you said, I have experience in the ecosystem, but I haven't had experience starting a business before. I didn't know what to do. And neither had the other two guys that I'm working with at Boreal. And so had a little bit of time and grace there to figure it out. And really, it wasn't until kind of mid or end of the summer last year that we were ready to say, like, let's kind of put our name out there. Let's start very slowly getting some clients and doing work, but do it on the side. And I think that was a good choice on our side. But it was hard to know, when do I quit my job and go full time Boreal? And it wasn't really until this year that was the plan.
So, and is it the same for your partners?
They're transitioning slowly. We made the choice to say, like, let's get me in there first, just because the dynamics between us and kind of how we're taking on roles of the company, it made sense for me to jump in there full time first. And then as we hit certain monthly revenue milestones, we'll start transitioning other guys out of there. Originally, the first plan was I'd be the last person to go full time because Grow was very cool with me doing Boreal at the same time, and that relationship. So it was like, I'll just ride both as long as I can, but we'll get the other guys in there. And then we kind of switched that around to saying, well, let's put Matt, his face out there. Let's get him doing the work and doing the marketing and all that stuff, and put him full time first. And so they're kind of still making that transition over.
Okay. No. So let me ask you a question. 'Cause I see, when I talk to companies, I see a lot of them start not necessarily the exact same way as you, but they start in a place where they're, we're building something. It's grab what you can. It's figure it out. It's, survival. It's a whole bunch of things early on. You pass the point where it's just that, right? And, in some ways you're passing that because you've moved from the half and into the full. How is that affecting or changing, or is it changing the way you're building, the way you're making decisions? who you're trying to work with? Is it doing anything on that front?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When we were planning Boreal, it's all idealism, right? It's all trying to say, in a perfect world, this is what we want to do. Here's our, you know, our mission statement, our vision statement. Here's,
Yeah.
the ethics behind our company and the path we want to go. But when push comes to shove, at some point you got to take customers, and maybe that's not your ideal niche or your ideal kind of workflow. And you have these ideas for pricing and packaging that kind of go out the window when someone wants to say, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to do this instead. And you're like, oh, I'll take it. And so it's changed for sure. The nice thing is just, I think the dynamic between me and my partners is that we're very open to change. We knew going into it that, like, let's design the ideal of what we want, but let's be super open to change. And that's how we always build inside of
Yeah.
Monday.com with our customers anyways, is like, we're going to plan this future state, but we're going to be very agile, and we know that this is just our plan going into it, but we need us and our customers to have the headspace of, this is going to change 1,000 times. And I think that mindset has helped a lot, because we're not doing the ideal stuff that we thought we would do. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the big ones that's maybe a little more interesting to talk about for some people is with like AI. Like to get a little more specific is a lot of Monday.com partners, or even not just Monday.com partners, but big like software service companies will say, okay, well, we're going to do like a big discovery phase and a big, project assessment. You're going to, Salesforce, they're going to spend $200,000 or $300,000 on just planning the project and gathering requirements and discovery. And then the actual implementation is going to be a few $1,000,000. We're not at that scale of pricing, but we would say, let's do a project assessment or a blueprint or spec book, whatever you want to call it, to plan out this process. And we'll charge for it, because a lot of companies kind of in our space do. And then we'll charge for the build after that. That's kind of gone out the window a little bit with AI. Building takes way less time. We can use tools like Claude via MCP to just be like, hey, here's our document that we've come up with, our plan, build it inside of Monday. And then we go and tweak, and we've cut 100 hours of work into like 15 hours of work. And in the planning side, it's like, we don't need to do all this planning up front. We can kind of build as we go with our customers. So it's less like software as a service. It's more like service as a service, if that makes sense.
Interesting. No, as a question for you. So as you bill and charge customers, you're doing it on an hourly basis. You're doing it on, like, how is that set up? Because obviously there's the struggle. If you get more and more help, like, I appreciate, like, you have expertise, right? So you still have
Yeah.
expertise that you're bringing to the table. The value that you're
Yeah.
bringing is significant, but if it's less and less time, does that make it harder to charge, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a concern that is very prevalent, I think, in the Monday.com partner ecosystem, is like, this was our bread and butter, was building Monday. How do we now charge if AI can do it? And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's expertise. And a lot of companies realistically could have somebody internally use AI tools and whatever to get them 80% of the way there or 70% of the way there to their build. But they want to take a little bit of the risk out of it. I mean, part of it's probably like a legal liability of, let's have somebody else come in, and if it's really bad and screws us up, then we can kind of put the blame on a scapegoat there. But I think a lot of it is, these guys have done it before, so let's just kind of have them guide us through it. And even if it's me and a customer sitting beside each other all day at a computer talking to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, and then building Monday with them, a lot of them still see the value in that. And a lot of the customers that don't see the value are probably customers that wouldn't have seen a lot of value anyways in there. So we kind of have to have that mindset. But the pricing side of it is tricky, because we used to be able to have our work breakdown structure of, here's what we're doing and the hours involved, and here's our rate and what we charge. And we can give the customer that breakdown, or we can just say it's a fixed fee for $40,000 to do this build for you, which is what we do at Grow. It's all, we have our estimating internally, but we just give them a fixed fee. If we go over, it's on us. If we're under, then we're efficient and we make a little bit more profit on it. Other companies worked in the past give a bit of a range, saying it'll be between 20 and 50 hours or what have you. And so they kind of keep it in there, and they do charge per hour. We're kind of a mix. It just depends on the customer. We're still doing those work breakdown structures and those estimates internally per hour.
Yeah.
But what used to take 2 hours could take 15 minutes now. So we have to tweak
Got
that kind of on our side. But we're still charging fixed fee for a lot of our customers. Or if it's consulting wise, then it's just hourly, which hasn't changed a lot.
Okay. No, you know, it's interesting. I was just talking to a client who was gonna spend like 150, just different thing, but $150,000 to implement something. And I just said to them, for what they were looking for what they need, that was crazy. And I can see how that's changing and, you know, made them reconsider. And it's this shift, and the shift is happening very, very quickly on that. How is that like? So do you hear, you know, you as a result of what you're describing, you must hear at times, oh, that's too expensive, or, you know, it's too much, or it's too expensive. How do you, because like too expensive to me is all relative. Like, what is too expensive? It's a lot. You know, they need it, they want it, but how do you think about that? How does that change the way you sell or you approach things with them?
I think the mindset of like building value is still prevalent, and I could be naive, but I don't think that's ever going to go away. I've always been a value seller of,
Mhm.
you know, at the end of the day, if you design posters as an example, your local community center might pay you $25 to design a poster for a block party or something, or a community dance, but Disney's going to pay you $2 million to design a poster for a similar thing. The work that goes into it could be very, very similar, but it's kind of the value that they get out of it, right? So it's always a hard thing, I think, to explain, and it's a hard skill to develop. But at the end of the day, we're still saying, you know, whether it takes us 15 minutes to do it or 15 hours to do it, you're still getting the same value out of it. The upside for them is after our engagement is done, or their engagement is done with us, are they going to keep us on as consultants
Mm.
to help them build, which a lot of customers used to do, and they still do to an extent. But that landscape's a little bit different now. They might not say, well, we want to keep you on retainer for a year for 20 hours a month to just help us tweak it as we build. Now it's a lot of, can you kind of train us for a couple months and then let us take over? Because they have all those tools at their disposal to make adjustments to the build and to add on to it. So a little bit of the long-term partnership, I think, is changing with customers. It's harder in some ways, easier in others.
So does
But I
that
think
make you,
that that's
sorry,
the
Matt,
thing.
to interrupt,
Oh, of
but
course.
like, does that make you, you know, there's a building and then it's a advising and or sort of support kind of role? Is that the way, again, the longer term, as opposed to every time they need a change, you do it for them? Like,
Yeah, I mean that's the ideal, right? We engage them beginning, we do a build, whether we do it in phases or we do it all at once, and then there's some sort of like we call it managed services after the fact of
yeah.
you keep us on retainer, basically on call for whatever you need down the road, whether it's little tweaks or training or the new things you want built in the system. That's kind of the ideal. I think that that's changed a little bit in terms of maybe what customers want out of it. But at the end of the day, it's still very similar. It's still, whether we get AI to do the build or we do the build or some mix of between, they still want your expertise. You know, they hire you for a reason. They want your expertise. And a lot of them still want your expertise after the main build is done. Just what that actually looks like in execution might look a little bit different now, but it's still very much that partnership. And so you're selling your service as opposed to the software or the product you've created. It's really that relationship that you're building with the customers and gaining their trust and then keeping that relationship going by just providing more value for them over time. I don't think that's changed much.
No, for sure. Let me ask you a question. So if you've started down this path, right? You like you said, we went in with all this idealistic kind of view of where we're headed. And that's, I get it. If you could wave a magic wand, go back, take a look at, you know, the last year and then obviously where you're at right now, is there anything that you would change? Anything you do differently? You know, how do you view that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with our execution of how we've done this, there probably isn't a lot that I'd change. Maybe little tactics here and there and little choices we made, but nothing major. I think the big thing that we haven't done the greatest job at, and it's something that I'm saying, oh, it's on my roadmap for next month, and then it gets kicked to the month after and the month after, and
Mhm.
is building our brand. And I think that that's an underrated thing. I was in Prague a couple weeks ago for a Monday.com event with a partners event, and I was talking to some of the other partners I've got good relationships with, and they were saying that one of the difference makers that's helped that is hard to quantify in terms of return on investment is building your brand, doing podcasts like this with you, making videos, just providing value for free to people out there is an underrated And that's something we haven't done a great job at. Like if you look at Boreal Systems online, okay, we've got a website, we've got an Instagram with one picture of me in New York from last year with somebody from Grow and then our logo. And you look at TikTok, we've got nothing. Facebook, I think we've got one or two posts. LinkedIn, we've got me posting, but you don't have a lot from the business. And it's hard to, especially in this day and age where customers are doing a lot more research before they walk in your door or call you up. There's not a lot out there for Boreal Systems. There's a ton out there for Grow. They're very good at marketing, and the CEO is a bit of like an influencer in Quebec in that way. But there's not a lot for Boreal. So I think if I could go back and make changes, I would say like half my time is going to be strategy and planning, and half my time is going to be like, let's get our name out there and let's build that brand up.
Very cool. Um, uh, so here's how do people, sorry, I'm thinking, writing, lots of stuff going through my head. How can folks find you? So where can they find you? How can they reach you?
I mentioned a lot of social channels that don't have a lot of activity on them, but if you Google Boreal Systems, you'll find us out there. But borealsystems.ca is the best way to check us out. Funny enough, I get a lot of messages on Reddit as well, just under Boreal Systems. So if anybody's on Reddit, you can shoot me a message there, or Instagram is Boreal Systems, Facebook's Boreal Systems, LinkedIn is Boreal Systems. Everything's there. Or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book, so happy to chat with anybody.
And I'll add some links into this when we post. So
Perfect.
try to get people to find you. That would be great. Anyway, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. This is great. Really insightful. Is really valuable. So thank you. Thanks so
Of
much.
course. Thanks for having me on.
And
Happy to
thank
do
you
it.
everyone for watching, listening. Until next time, see you later.